It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday, and Scout decided to just flop on my foot. So Scout's gonna say hi to everybody, right, Scouty? Come here, honey. Come here. This is a nice surprise. Scouty! There he is. Yeah. Hi, everybody. This is Scout. Okay, so Scout's gonna get comfy because he only likes to sit on his back. He doesn't like to sit like that. Yeah, I am really overtired, guys. So I am going to go out of my way to not ramble like an idiot. No promises. I've got a bunch of housekeeping to do today. I'm not going to shill the patron today because I am in the middle of, I don't know what to call it. I'm not running this. My husband is, but it is a crowdfunding campaign that I have been tweeting and Facebooking and all this stuff about. It's for something called the FU Network, and I wanted to take a few moments to explain sort of what I'm doing with this, and if you choose to give, why you want to give to this. It is, I'm doing, among other things, the gaming content. Now, this channel's not going to go away. I'm still going to do this channel. Lady Bits is going to be sort of co-hosted on the FU Network as well. So it's going to be here, and then it's going to be on the FU Network as well, because some people are going to see it here, some people are going to see it there. But I'm also going, as part of this initiative, to be finally able to train people to review and cover games. And that's my big kind of core of the mandate. Not just producing content, but to actually do something I've wanted to do for a really long time, which is create a series of webinars about how to properly review games and how to properly interview a game developer, and the difference between op-ed and actual, like, news reporting coverage and all these things. And if somebody wants to do gaming content on the FU Network, you gotta do the webinars. And so it's quality control, and I'm just tired of some of the stuff that the videos we did this week touched on. So I finally have to start doing something about it, and this is what I can do. So if this seems like a worthy cause, the link is in the description box. Please give what you can. I'm not sure what the sort of incentives or the tiers are, but that's sort of, you won't find this anywhere there. This is my stuff. Most of the people who are covering and giving to this are TV people, not gaming people. So I can't, like, it's not my thing. I can't really break it down, but that's what the gaming portion is going to be. It's going to be, we're probably going to start with indie games just because of the way the SEO works, but it will branch out obviously into more mainstream games at some point. People like mainstream games, yada, yada, all that stuff. But yeah, my little corner of this thing, it's actually going to be sorted for quality control, not opinion. So, you can have any take on a game you want, as long as it is professional and not personal. In op-ed is fine. Personal when you're doing a developer interview or, a game preview is not. It can't be about you and your experience and the actual product. You can't do gonzo and consumer advocacy at the same time. They're completely different styles of writing with completely different purposes. So if you think this is a worthy cause, I'd really appreciate the support. There's obviously a much greater access to non-gaming forms of media, like press, publicity, things like that, through this than I can do on my own. I'm still blacklisted in the gaming industry. So moving on to this week's content. I don't want to touch too much on the Monday video with the feminist frequency statistics because I agree with the commenters that said that, pay them as little attention as possible. I just thought in this case I made an exception. I don't talk about them that much, but in this case I made an exception and thought I could actually show that these numbers are not bad the way they were covered in places like Polygon. These numbers, comparative to other media industries, are actually excellent numbers. And so I just wanted to say that. It wasn't about giving feminist frequency more attention. It's their data. So I have to cite their data. But it was my own interpretation, and I thought that, that was worthwhile. So that I hear you. I agree with you. Sometimes there's going to be an exception to that. When there's actually something that isn't just opinion and hard data, that's the exception. Cool. I think you guys understand that. I didn't really think people were complaining or disagreeing with me per se. I just think they were having their voices heard, and that's the whole purpose of having open comments and everything like that. So I just wanted to address the fact that I hear you and I agree, and this is why I went against that in this instance. The video on gaming addiction was, there were some pretty powerful comments left that people talking about their own gaming addiction. And you guys know, whenever you guys offer up personal information like that, it's very touching to me. Some people talked about how, gaming addiction turned into drugs and alcohol and all that stuff, but it was escaping from a really shitty reality. And I got a really kind of clearly emotional message from someone about that 24-year-old guy whose mom like trotted him out like a freak of nature for the New York Times. And I related a lot to his emotional reaction to this guy. I had similar, like, why the reporter didn't catch what was going on there, I don't know. If the reporter caught what was going on with that kid and his mother, I think she probably would have addressed the issue differently, because if she didn't, that's just insensitive and horrible and further stigmatizing people with mental health challenges. I don't think we've talked enough about how much a lot of mental health challenges are environmental. It's not... Some people, they do have situations where they just don't make enough dopamine, or their dopamine receptors don't work as well as effectively as somebody else's. So they are sort of in a permanent state of low mood that, either medication will help them or there's not much they can do about. But they've also found that people who go through these sort of prolonged states of stress or anguish, the brain chemistry actually does change. And you can have very, very positive impacts by changing your environment. If you're 24 years old and your mother is still telling you what time to go to bed and what time to stop playing video games and all that stuff, you're never going to individualize. Of course you're depressed. Of course. Like, yes, that is a shortcut to depression. You know what I'm saying? There is no surprise that this young man is depressed. And my heart goes out for him. That was just, a snapshot of everything that was wrong with that New York Times article. And if you're watching this early, like between 11 and 1 o'clock Eastern time, I am going to be on a radio program out of Halifax talking about this issue about gaming addiction. I have posted a player link on Twitter, so even if you're not in the Halifax area, you can listen. I know there are a few people in this channel who are in the Halifax area, so you guys can actually listen on the radio, but I'm looking forward to that because I like being able to give the good facts about this sort of gaming stuff instead of, letting the New York Times have their way with people. I don't know what's wrong with the Times, but it's so frustrating. Anyway, moving on. I don't want to dwell on that because some of the comments to the Beelzebub video were super hilarious, and I love you guys. And some of them were actually really interesting too, and I wanted to share them, but the funny was what I really needed. I really needed to do that one in character. And some people noticed that, you know, there's sometimes I almost slipped. I got so frustrated with things that, and some of it was just, yeah, it was sort of, but, and then I'm like, was that in character? I wasn't sure at times, and you guys weren't sure at times either. And there were parts of that article in Kotaku about Soulcalibur 6 that felt like a punch in the gut. And it took me a couple days to figure out why. And sometimes it's instructive to come at something through a persona, because then you're taking another look at things from somebody who doesn't give a shit. You know, the perspective of like this demon chick who, screw you, I'm better than all of you. Ride the party bus to hell. I finally realized that it wasn't just that the article criticized the game series, because all game series get criticized, right? No game is for everyone. There's somebody who's not going to like something. That's life. The author went beyond and assumed motivations for the actual players of the games, the fans of the series, that she could not possibly know with certainty. And of course, they were negative assumptions. There are a bazillion reasons why a particular group of gamers would not pass a girl a controller. My experience with that was Street Fighter. It wasn't Soulcalibur. And it was just, in that case, it was because it was a bunch of guys and they all knew each other. They didn't know me as well. So they had their rhythms. They sat around and played Street Fighter. It was Street Fighter 4 at the time. But, so it was just, they had their rhythms and they hadn't adapted to a new person being there. It had nothing to do with my gender. I know that. They're not those sorts of guys as a group. And, you got to watch your assumptions as a reporter that way, because if you're wrong, it skews your whole approach. And I really took personally the gross and sweeping assumptions the reporter made about why people play these games and how these games affect them. I think she's dead wrong. She's entitled to her opinion, but I think she's dead wrong. And because I had that personal reaction, I didn't think I could be all the things I said, impartial, professional as myself. And that's when, the character can come out and just let things rip and say things because they're funny and glib and not necessarily because I mean them. And mean them is a tricky thing with comedy. You exaggerate for effect. You go certain places because it's a funny line, that sort of thing. But it's so clearly a character that it was fun instead of just being like this cathartic experience. And I think like you guys got it, and the comments reflected that. One commenter, and I love this. I love when you guys get smart and kind of smutty at the same time. This is brilliant. According to Dante, the lustful end up in the windswept wasteland of the second circle of hell, which is presumably where Beelzebub and her party bus would be found. Yes, that is so perfect, because not only is it the lustful, but also everything with Beelzebub comes in pairs. So the second circle of hell is perfect. It's two circles. That's Beelzebub. That's why she has two tridents. So well done, commenter. And this commenter identifies as a lawful good succubus. I salute you. As a lawful good character myself, I understand. We have a connection, this dragon succubus person and I. So this is very cool. This is a user who's getting a commenter who's getting more and more and more involved, and their contributions to chats and comments and things like that are just top notch. So I'm very happy to have them here. Somebody else said, this made me laugh. Wild West Beelzebub, your personas have personas now. Have you considered a line of action figures? I'm not even kidding. I would literally buy Beelzebub merch. And someone else said, same. And it's funny. The reason I say this is funny is because I am considering Beelzebub merch. I'm trying to figure out how to make it work. Because then I'd have to do Mephisto merch as well. I'm actually working on a Momo plushie. Prototypes and things like that. The t-shirt for the Kickstarter ended up being Beelzebub. Like, Beelzebub's just merchandisable. I don't know why. I'm actually thinking that the patch is just going to be the little devil character as well, because I can't think of anything else to do. But Beelzebub, by the second video, because the first one was just a coping mechanism to being called literally the devil by you-know-who. Or literally who, as the case may be. When the character started to branch out, and I'm like, okay, this is more than a joke, because it was like that, the literally the devil plus the 666 video, that's where Beelzebub came from. I just thought it was funny. I just refuse to let people keep me down or upset me or hurt me for long, and I tend to just turn things into jokes or creative endeavors, but I started kind of thinking about the character when it was a lot more popular than I expected, and going, all right, I don't want this to be a costume. I want this to be a character who has a fashion sense, because I think I got this from Bayonetta, that one of the things that's sort of fun and powerful about femininity is wardrobe and fashion and all this stuff, and Beelzebub just didn't strike me as somebody who would wear one thing. And so Beelzebub never wears quite the same thing twice. And so yes, Beelzebub does have outfits, which makes me wonder about whether I should be doing like a PVC line or a Barbie type doll where there's actually outfits manufactured for Beelzebub. I'm not sure. I'm still thinking about this because it is actually kind of cute. And it's funny because one of the things, like as a childhood, one of the girly things I actually liked was My Little Pony, because I thought it was so patently absurd that horses were wearing clothes. And you got the horse and you got the little ice skates and little roller skates and everything from My Little Pony. But I always liked the not the ponies, like the unicorns and the Pegasus and Pegasi or whatever. And the best clothes never fit the horses with wings or the horses with the horns. So the little shoes fit and everything like that. But the roller skates were like my favorite thing, because I'd put my little purple-haired unicorn, even back then, I liked the purple hair. And so I put my little purple-haired unicorn on the roller skates, and it would be like... that would be like the battle tank, because she was a unicorn, right? And so she'd be the front line, and then there'd be this evil army of oodles behind her. I don't know if you guys know what oodles are. There were these weird little plastic baby things that smelled like baby powder, but they were all like naked babies in different poses. And so it looked very much like, the enemies in certain survival horror games. And I was too young at this point to even know what survival horror was. This is just how my brain worked. But it was like them, and then the army of oodles. So that was like the infantry, and then the Gem and the Hologram shock troopers that flew in on, because the Gem and the Holograms had like the cool doll stands that were like hovercrafts, and so they go in and pew, 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 pew. And then like the few like Masters Universe type figures, or some of the other like stuffed animals, they would bring up the rear, and they'd be like the generals and like the champion fighters and things like that. And so the girl toys that people thought, oh, she's doing something normal. No, I did not play with those toys to the intended effect. The instruments from Gem and the Holograms turned into freaking laser guns, man, because those were double weapons. Like Aja's little keyboard thing and Kimber's guitar was like choo 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 choo, and even the Jazz's saxophone was like laser. And so You could give me all the girl toys you wanted. They turned into space battles, man. And they were epic space battles. Like the entire freaking basement, when I wasn't blowing holes in the floor with a chemistry set, science, were these epic space battles of the toys that people got me to not turn me into a lesbian. And I think that really impacted my approach to games. And so when I think of Beelzebub merchandise, I think of those My Little Pony outfits. And wouldn't it be funny to have this little devil chick and then there are little outfits for her? But I don't know, PVC is probably easier. It's easier to sort of display, and this is a primarily male audience, so you know, it's more action figure, less doll, and I understand that that's important. But it was a very funny comment because I have thought about it. And the commenter uses the line, action figures. So that tells me something. But let me know. You can comment on this. That's what Feedback Friday's for. Another person said, and this is a line I almost put in. That's why this is so funny. I try to avoid people that claim not to be perverts. They're usually boring. And they said, to tell the truth, I'm a little sad there wasn't more distance between Beelzebub and the camera. And I finally figured out today what was wrong with my damn camera. My monitor is one of those swivel ones, so they go up, down, and I had it tilted up too much. And I was sitting here going, wow, what's wrong with this? Why is the angle all off? But yeah, I didn't like the framing either. There wasn't enough boob in the Beelzebub, but it was a crazy day when I shot that video. It's a very long story. I'll spare you. But yeah, there were other things going on. I had to reshoot it once for audio issues, and I just couldn't reshoot it again. I was already so punchy because I had a million things going. I was distracted. And I didn't want to, you know, you get sort of that zone where you can put in really good work. And I felt like I was coming out of the zone. So like, it is what it is. I'd rather good content than super boobs. There will be time for super boobs later. But I just wanted to know that, yeah, that was actually a camera angle problem. It wasn't, even now it's like not right. It's just not positioned right. You know what I mean? I think I got to get this camera off the monitor. So when the monitor moves, the camera doesn't go with it. I need to mount it to the wall or something like that. But I almost had Beelzebub say that she prefers perverts because they're honest. Because, yeah, it's, if people share with you sort of their, especially when you get into sort of the waifu thing instead of the sex thing. And I think that's a little understood thing in Western games journalism. The whole idea that a waifu is not like a sex object. It's like a fictional partner. And so to call it objectifying, to call someone's main or someone's waifu an objectified character, the only proper response to that is really GTFO, because if someone claims to be a fan of fighting games, they should know this phenomenon. They should know the waifu and the husbando, is that right? Husbando? Yeah. Are strong, and you do not mess with one's waifu. It's not a sexual thing. It's an oddly deep relationship. And, you know, there's more than one way to appreciate a character, male or female, and people liking a character does not always mean they're like sexually lusting after that character. The idea that anybody's fapping to a fighting game is ridiculous. You'll get your ass kicked. You have to concentrate so hard afterwards. Okay, maybe. I don't know what you do, but I personally don't really connect to video game characters in that way, just because you're controlling them. Like the unreality is so palpable because you're literally making dance monkey dance that, I don't know. I mean, I understand why people get, you know, sort of waifu relationships with characters like Cortana, because they're talking in your ear. You're not controlling them directly. But playable characters, that's just me. I don't connect to playable characters in that way. They're like a partner. I'm not judging if people find video game characters sexually attractive. I just don't think that's their purpose, and I don't think you can assume that that's what a character like Ivy is for. I keep coming back because you guys know I love my soul. I am obsessing about Soul 6 in like a very real way. I think the last game I was this excited for was God of War, and thank God I was not disappointed. I think that's why I was a little late to the game on that one, because I'm like, what if it's not good? I'm going to be so upset. But it was really good. I keep watching for character reveals. I'm like subscribed to the Bandai. Is it Bandai Namco? I don't remember, but I'm subscribed on YouTube, and I'm like, I want the complete roster. Give me the complete roster. Is it October yet? Please let it be October. I'm so stoked for this game. I really like where they're going with it. I kind of like the fact that they're going back to an adapted Soul 2 costume for Ivy, because, you know, it's sort of a reboot. And the fact that they're actually going to get into that lore of Soul Edge and Soulcalibur separating, like how Soulcalibur was formed from Soul Edge, and the whole identification with the feminine that is so central to, you know, the Soulcalibur series. The weird, like, Sword Eve came out of Sword Adam's rib if Sword Adam was evil kind of way. It's like the mythology of this game series. I don't know how anybody can say, oh, this is objectifying women, when the female energy is the good energy, and the, you know, the evil sword is male. You know, it's too complicated for that. And there's always sort of been, you know, from the beginning, female characters put front and center, whether it's Sophitia, whether it's Taki. And I've said before, I like the fact that they've made Taki look like the way her breast tissue is arranged. Her boobs are no smaller. It's just, as someone, trust me, has to crush these things into various containers. It's just, they've actually put like a proper bra structure. And that's what always drove me crazy about Taki before. They were like dangling in zero gravity, and it just looked very uncomfortable in a way that, for me, Ivy didn't. Ivy had a more natural curvature to the breast that it didn't bother me nearly as much. Now, some people are like, oh, if Taki was wearing a bra, she wouldn't have visible nipples. That's actually not true. One of these days, I am going to do a game designer's guide to bras. I don't know how to do it because YouTube, there's no way YouTube would let me do a thing where I'm in my underwear. But I actually think it's a useful resource for, hey, male game designers, here's what different bras do. And it's funny because everybody gets on Ivy. It's like, that's so unrealistic. But I actually have a bra that it's adhesive. It's designed to be worn with strapless and backless dresses. And you wouldn't be fighting in it, but Siegfried is wearing cavalry armor for hand-to-hand combat. None of this is realistic, so let's just blow me on that. But it's actually a thing where it like sticks to one side and sticks to the other side, and then it clips in the middle, and it just sort of holds up the boobs by that. Like, you get it sort of underneath. And so that kind of thin thing of fabric across Ivy's boobs, I've always sort of seen that as like a symbol of like kind of her, she hasn't separated from her, you know, adopted father who got obsessed with Soul Edge and from Cervantes. And so sort of like a sign of bondage, but she's the dominatrix instead of the sub. And that's very important to a character, because then there's Valdo, who is the sub. Like, he's happy being submissive, and he's all, and, you know, everything's backward. Everything's weighted backward. Whereas Ivy is this sort of embodiment of aggression, and it's so freaking cool. And as you can tell, I can talk for a really long time about the Soulcalibur characters. And so when someone reduces them to just fan service, I admit I get mad. I think that's just as relevant as the women who are working out their personal insecurities on video game characters. And there has to be a way, maybe I can find that way, of making both voices count. Like, I still don't get in a game where you can pick Talim or Amy or Hildy or a whole bunch of other female characters who aren't wearing next to nothing and who don't have giant boobs, why you would complain about a couple of characters that do have them. And I keep coming back to this idea that women feel like they're not allowed to like these characters because of the boobs. And that's a problem. Because if you like a character, cup size should not stop you. I mean, do you think that guys who play fighting games look like the men in those games? And more we're sort of getting the feeling that this idea that men should all have abs. I do not subscribe to that, guys. Like, that is not my type. But more and more, it's like with the Marvel movies, that is becoming less and less. Oh, we don't really see that in media. There's more depictions of men. So I don't think that's a fair argument, that the idea that if women like that exist in games, that women in the real world should feel pressured to look like that. That has more to do with your immediate social circle and the people you associate with. People shouldn't be putting that pressure on you. It's fantasy. I'd like to see more games with more diverse body types, and I do mean body types, like shorter legs, longer torsos, just more interesting. But with motion capture, we're sort of getting that by default, whereas back then when they were building the wireframes, it was asset reuse, right? I mean, when you actually broke those down, and we did for the cosplays, you sort of saw, okay, they scaled this and they scaled that. And Ivy's got really broad shoulders, so I'm pretty sure they kind of used a dude wireframe for her. And in Soul 3 and 4, when she lifted her hand above her head, the pauldron actually clipped into her shoulder. So I'm not surprised that they shrunk that thing down, because you can only get your hand to about here with that giant ass pauldron. But again, Siegfried is wearing cavalry armor for hand-to-hand combat. So this is all just fun. But thanks for the fun. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for interacting with the content in the spirit it was given. You guys are awesome. And yeah, let me know about that merchandise idea, because that is something that, I mean, maybe we could do a little thing where I do a prototype and then we do pre-orders, and so I'm not just manufacturing out of pocket. Maybe that's a way to do it, and we start with like a 4-piece PVC series. And it could be like, you know, Cowboy Beelzebub, Base Beelzebub, Mamatron, and Mephisto. And, I guess we'd need, I'm blank. Oh, the Canine Oppressor. That's what I called Loki. That was his name. Yeah, so we'd have to have like the different characters, and so people can do their own little. I intended at one point on doing like all the chibis as sort of something, a sticker set or something like that, so people could make their own little versus mode things. But this is all very high concept, and it's all about how do I get the budget. So if this is something we're interested in, for sure. I was hesitant to do too many Beelzebub t-shirts because of that whole safe for work thing. I know if you live in the Bible Belt, you might not want to explain that. But yeah, let me know. It's an interesting idea. I am going to go crash now and get some sleep because I am way overtired, which is why I cannot make these videos any shorter. And Soulcalibur, oh my god, I can't shut up about that game. I am so freaking excited. Is it October yet? Thanks for watching. Have a good weekend.